This is just the latest on the prisoner swap that we were just starting to get the early details on. The National Security Council spokesperson for Jake Sullivan has just put out a tweet saying we can confirm reports that Iran has released from prison 5 Americans who were unjustly detained and has placed them under house arrest. Far from appearing to be a done deal at this point, Mark Meredith, what are we learning about the actual exchange and the details involved?
Sandra, good afternoon yet again. Well, the biggest news here, which is what you just mentioned, the White House now confirming that 5 Americans who had been detained in Iran a few different years here, different sentences, have now been moved to house arrest, but that they are still in Iran, that they have not left the country, that they have not made their way back to the United States. And what's interesting here is that the National Security Council, through their statement, made it clear that these negotiations are still ongoing. So as you said, not a done deal. In fact, the statement reads, "We will therefore have little in the way of details to provide about the state of their house arrest or about our efforts to secure their freedom," meaning the White House not yet willing to say what was done in exchange to make this happen for these 5 Iranian Americans to be moved out of moved out of prison, to even prison, out into house arrest. What's interesting is that the White House has also identified 3 of the 5 people who have been moved out of this prison, but they're not listing all 5. They say 2 of those involved are still asking for their privacy. So the big question, of course, is what were the negotiations looking like that went into this event today? What was also interesting is that how this news broke. It was a lawyer representing some of the families trying to secure their release was the one that broke this news, and now he's pushing back on reports that it was because of a prisoner swap. He was quoted in another news outlet, and he said, "No, that wasn't true. I didn't say the word prisoner swap." And it's also interesting, in this statement from the National Security Council, they don't say the word prisoner swap either. They simply say the status of the unjustly detained Americans in Iran. So whether or not we actually have saw some exact deal signed yet, that still looks like it hasn't happened. Instead, maybe the ball was rolling, that they were able to get a lot closer today than they were over the last several months. We have reached out to the Senate and House Foreign Relations Committee, because you can imagine a lot of lawmakers are also going to want to know what was put into place to make something like this happen. Whether or not we're going to hear the president talk about this is yet to be seen. The Secretary of State, he also has a few events on his schedule today. But from this statement, Sandra, from what we're hearing right now, the White House doesn't sound like they're popping champagne, instead saying that they've been moved to house arrest, that is a sign of notable progress, but that these Americans are not home yet and that they are not going to rest until these Americans are home. And then once again, they also say that these U.S. citizens should never have been detained in the first place, an indication that they're not going to admit any wrongdoing. But we'll look to see what the details are. Hopefully we'll find out within the next few hours.
Mark, just stay with me for a second here, because the initial reports coming from the New York Times, NBC News, and others, the headlines were indicating that a deal had been reached, like this was a done deal, and we knew the details of it. NBC News was reporting as a planned prisoner swap. The word swap is not being used in the statements by either the White House or the State Department. We just received that new statement via Matt Miller, spokesperson at the State Department, saying they're relieved to learn Iranian authorities have released these 5 American citizens, naming 3 of them, saying 2 other individuals at this time wish to remain private. They're being moved from prison to house arrest. They're in touch with the families. And they'll continue to monitor their health and welfare closely. To your point, while we welcome the news of these individuals released from prison to house arrest, they should have never been imprisoned in the first place. State saying we continue to work diligently to bring these individuals home to their loved ones. They must be allowed to depart Iran and reunite with their loved ones as soon as possible. And digging through the White House release here, and by the way, we're about to hear from President Biden there in Salt Lake City. Just moments from now, he's expected to speak. We'll see if he says anything specifically on this. Reading through the White House statement, Mark, it says at one point, until that time of their release and when they return home to the United States, negotiations for their eventual release remain ongoing and are delicate. So, Mark, this is not done yet.
Sandra, I think you absolutely hit the nail on the head here. And it's interesting, you mentioned that NBC report. The lawyer that first put out the statement that kind of broke open this whole thing about 30 minutes ago tweeted out that the NBC report was wrong. He said that he never said that there was a prisoner swap in place. And in these statements, again, that you're quoting both from the State Department as well as what we have from the National Security Council, They don't use that language either. That's not to say that that's maybe not what is going to happen, but perhaps that it's still not a done deal yet. And you'd almost have to imagine that the Iranians are hedging their bet here, moving these Americans to house arrest as opposed to moving them out of the country, because in the statement that you just mentioned from the State Department spokesperson, the last line of it says they must be allowed to depart Iran and reunite with their loved ones as soon as possible. Doesn't sound like they have plane tickets booked out of Tehran quite yet. Instead, the idea is that they are simply seeing this progress here. Maybe it's that good faith first step, and then we'll wait to see whether or not there are any other terms of conditions of release that have been put out there. But we've also been here before, Sandra. I remember there was rumors back in March. There was kind of this back and forth between the Iranian and U.S. officials about, was there a deal going to happen? Was there going to be a swap taking place fairly soon? That didn't come to be. We have seen other countries been able to secure the release of some of their citizens out of Iranian custody. But as you talk about, the big headline at this hour, 5 Americans who were detained in Iran being moved out of a pretty notorious prison in Iran under house arrest. As to whether or not they'll be getting out tomorrow, within the next week, that is yet to be seen. And as you mentioned, we'll be listening closely to see if the president brings this up. He's at a veterans event out in Utah. I would imagine that this is not going to be in the speech. Instead, he's going to leave the statement to let it speak for itself. We'll see if Secretary Blinken adds in a little bit further later on today. Sandra?
Mark, this is Jillian with a follow-up for you. You mentioned that there had been whisperings of this potential prisoner swap in the works. One of the barriers or spoke in the wheel that we heard about came Monday when the Iranians arrested an unidentified Iranian-American woman inside the country. She had been working for an Afghan NGO, we believe. We don't know the name of that organization either. But the consensus had been this is now on pause. Anybody at the White House expressing how that played into this, or the fate of that woman who was arrested inside Iran?
No, we have not heard that. But again, 2 of the people that were moved to house arrest, they have not been publicly identified. So it's certainly possible, Jillian, that the person you're referencing could be the one that was the latest development or the latest one to become caught up in this situation. But we don't have confirmation of that because the lawyer representing those people is only representing, we were told, 3 of those 5 families that have been involved. I would imagine those names, of course, are going to come out eventually. But at this point, the National Security Council saying that they don't want to say who they are because they want to remain private. They all say that the State Department has been involved in contact with these families. There's been rumors out there that maybe the families were contacted a little bit earlier to let them know this was coming.
Mark Meredith, yep, live at the White House for us. Mark, jump back in when you get new details.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.